Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crushing Comics. I am your host, Peter, also known throughout the internet as Crisis with a K. And I'm here with a special reunion of sorts because about a year ago, I used to appear on the Fangirls Assemble channel every week to dissect every issue of House of X and Powers of X. And now that a year has gone by, we thought we would reassemble some of who we called at the time the HiX-Men Report to talk a little bit about what Dawn of X has been like for the last year. So I have live on one side of me, Tyler. Tyler, hello.
Hi, how is everyone?
And I also have one of our favorite guests of the channel here to make her return appearance, Fangirl.
How are you doing, everyone, today?
I'm so happy to be back together. Of course, if you know the HiX-Men Report lore, you know we are missing 1/4 of the HiX-Men Report. Zach, I don't know if he returned from the resurrection protocols. We might still be experimenting to see how we can hatch him from that egg.
Yeah. You probably need some music to lure him out of the egg.
Yeah, he's not cooperating. We had about 10 failed attempts so far, so we are still working on it.
I mean, they gave Kitty 18, so I think we can keep trying for Zach.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's he's actually on one of the top ones. So we're trying to get him out of there.
Yeah, he's near the top of the list. He's one of our top men.
He's first in the line. He's first in the line.
First in the line, and the top men are working on this. I can assure everyone.
So if that little salvo wasn't enough as a hint, this is full spoiler territory. We are all caught up to the current week of Dawn of X, and we really don't know what's going to happen in this chat. We haven't been together in the same visual chat room for about a year. So we really don't have any kind of preview about where we're going to take this or what we're going to talk about, but it is itself a prelude to X of Swords because we are hoping to be back to talk about a few of the things going on in X of Swords.
Is it X of Swords or is it 10 of Swords?
Well, it's both, knowing Jonathan Hickman, right? Any X is a 10.
10 men.
10, right, 10 men. 10 force.
I'm excited to see where this is going because I was not caught up to any of the single issues because, I actually don't read single issues.
No, you're much more of a trade reader, generally.
Yeah, I am a trade reader and at times also omnibus reader. But the thing is, so after HOXPOX, I was kind of fell off the wagon. And then, so when they said that, there's going to be an X of Swords, so it actually got me all intrigued. I'm like, what does that mean? Because swords is not something I ever think about with X-Men. Even with my limited knowledge. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
And for people who didn't watch HiX-Men Report last year, Fariha, you had basically not read a lot of X-Men before that. You knew Morrison X-Men. Had you even read Whedon X-Men by the time we were?
No, I did the Whedon X-Men and also Peter David's X Factor after we have done with the HiX-Men Report. So I am kind of like a new mutant in all of this. You can also I'm not compared to the two of you, I'm actually have lesser knowledge. So to me, a lot of these things is so fresh and so different. We'll talk about it. I'm coming into this HiX-Men in a complete fresh perspective.
Whereas Tyler, you not only like me have read the vast majority of X-Men comic books, but you keep up with this stuff so well. Every month I actually look at Tyler to be like, did I miss something? Am I missing something? So you're reading these really closely still, right?
I am. I mean, I have not been collecting single issues for a long time. I think since I think 2000.
Wow.
So yeah. And then I restarted comics maybe, 2016 by buying my first collected edition. And then because of House of X, Powers of 10, I started buying single issues again. And the X line is the only comics that I'm reading in floppies week after week.
And for me, I have a similar story to Tyler just a few years prior. I had not been reading for about 15 years until 2010, as many people on the channel already know. And then I started reading collected editions, but I've actually been reading all singles and digital since 2017. I kind of decided there's enough collected editions in the house. I only am kind of picking up collected editions of older stuff that I've always wanted. And from 2016 comics forward, I'm full digital. So I read all of Marvel, all of DC, all of Valiant. I mean, I read 2,500 new comic books last year. I really try to read everything, so I have a perspective on everything. So that's my mutant power, I guess.
Right. And the thing is, like, Peter is the person I contact if I hear about a new title. I'm like, is this any good? And then if Peter says no, I'm like, off my list then. It shall never be read.
But Peter is not such a huge fan of Hickman. So if he says no, and are you not going to read any Hickman books anymore?
Well, so if we were to flash back to the end of House of X, Powers of X, I was in my feelings at the end there. Like I love X-Men for a very specific thing. I love it for the personalities. I love it for the relationships. I love it for the X-women. And I just was like feeling like House of X, Powers of X. I loved Powers of X. Like if we all remember, I was upset. All that future phalanx BS, I was so into that. And then the House of X with like, they all go to space and they all talk in the same voice and then they die and they come back. Like I was just not as thrilled. And I ended it kind of like on a cliffhanger, like, am I even going to keep up with this? But you two were pretty excited by the end of it, right?
Yeah.
I was, yeah. I personally.
You were like, what? It was like a whole new world to you because you were like, all of these mutants, they're all so beautiful. Like you were totally into it.
I was totally into it. And the thing is that, and when we did the New Mutants series, that, the question, the talk that we had in lieu of HiX-Men, I talked about that, one of the things that really bothers me, that X-Men is kind of being used as like this weak link in Marvel Universe where they're hunted, they're persecuted. I was so sick and tired of that, and I really don't care for that. And one of the reasons that I'm always kind of a little bit away from X-Men because of that. I mean, there is enough of that in this real world. So it always kind of brings back a lot of like annoyance for me. So the fact that now they're here, they're not going anywhere, they're like super powerful. It's like, the entire line has been nothing but competence porn for me because there is like there's nothing that can stop them. And I love it.
I love competence porn. I'm like, how do I mention this in a work situation without it being weird? I'm like, I'm going to use the word porn, but only in a positive, affirming way. I love competence porn.
Like, competence porn is the best. Like, it's just like, I love it when like
people being great at their jobs.
People being absolutely like freaking fantastic at their job. Nothing can stop them. There is no weakness. Like the biggest weakness is like, I can't access that portal. Like to me, it's just the best thing ever. And, a lot of people, like I've seen like there was a lot of people who was like, oh, X-Men can't die anymore. What does that mean? Well, read and you will find out because there's different challenges now, which are far more
exactly.
than what we've been seeing all these years.
I want to hear Tyler talk about it a little. So as a long-term X-Men fan, does it bother you that they can't die? Because some people, there's a vocal minority of people who are like, the X-Men not being able to die is a deal breaker for me. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel like, I'm hoping that there's a point to this whole resurrection thing, besides being like, any mutants who have been killed so far, a lot of them have been brought back, and not brought back in a very. I just don't like the stories of some of them, how they're being brought back, like the Jean Grey, resurrection. The first one I think was quite interesting because it's Inferno and it has Maddie. It resolved that whole mess, because of editor interference, but. The second time when they brought her back, the whole Phoenix thing, it kind
Phoenix
of
resurrection
was a
from
still,
it just kind of just seemed like it happened because it had to happen.
Yeah, and then Nightcrawler, the resurrection was kind of it's kind of a mess for me too. I mean, I kind of like, so what is he right now? Right? Is he an angel? Is he a devil? Is he like is he even like mortal? Because I think at one point they were saying that he can die because he's already dead or something like that. Yeah. And then it's just a big mess. So, having this mechanism of bringing mutants back without having to go through this whole process of like, oh, let's try and find a contrived way of bringing this person back or bringing this fan favorite back. Oh, talk about Wolverine. I mean, come on.
Oh my God.
I'm like, no.
I completely.
He dies and comes back in every issues. Like he dies and comes back in every issues. I read a lot of Wolverine, and I can tell you that's his trademark.
But what I love, and I think it's exactly what you're saying, Tyler, is like, just no more contrivance. Like everybody's on the board, everybody gets their favorite. Every title is packed with characters that somebody loves. And it's just not a big, like death is not a big deal because other things in the story are the big deal. I think if they weren't all going to die and every issue of every comic was them just going on a suicide mission and then popping out of a respawn point, that would be tiresome. But it kind of feels like there is a comic about that, and it's X-Force. And that theme of like everybody dying constantly, which I think we all rightfully were afraid from HOXPOX was going to be like the whole point. There's plenty of comics where nobody's died yet. It's not the whole point. It just clears the board to make the relationships more interesting, to make the struggle against humanity more interesting, to make the history more interesting. And like I've had many vocal criticisms of this run, but them being able to come back from the dead is not one of my criticisms in the slightest.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that I feel like that kind of allows our writers open to different kind of stories to tell, because it just takes that away. So now you're dealing with different kinds of issue. Like, one thing is like X-Men, even me being a New Mutant, I can tell you that there's so many, everyone is like, oh, someone ends up dying. And then 4 or 5 years later, they come back in some most ridiculous way. However, now it's just going to be about them just being kick-ass.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say earlier that if anyone is still not convinced that Resurrection is a good story, read X Factor #1.
Yeah. I mean, there's been some so actually let's get into this. I want to go around. I want everybody to talk about first their favorite series and why. Like pitch people. If people haven't been keeping up, if they haven't been reading everything, why must they read your favorite? And I'll go too. And then I want to go through and just talk about some of our favorite moments. I actually suspect we're going to have different favorite series, but potentially the same favorite moment. So let's start with series. Tyler, since you kind of got into recommending something specific there, what is your #1, don't miss it, best series of Dawn of X so far?
When it first started, I kind of did not like it because every series is going in the new direction from, coming out of HOXPOX. And then this one sort of started off like, it's the same thing again. It's people attacking the mutants again. And, it is X-Force. But surprisingly, the characterizations, it's really well done. And especially the villain turn in Beast. I think that was really, really well done. And, talking about Hickman not being able to write women, ex-women properly, Jean Grey was really, really well written in X-Force. I mean, she stood up she stood up for her morals, her principles, and she pushed back against Beast, and she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. And then of course, she got into a hot bath with like naked Wolverine.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
no.
I mean, I actually, I
should have
did
led
not,
with that.
I didn't love, yeah, you should have led with that. I didn't love X-Force's first issue because much like you, I was like, here's the same thing. It's the X-Murder team, but it's got so much nuance to it. And it's like, it really balances these more nuanced moments of like real moral choices about like, do we have the right to push back against these people? Do we have the right to invade a sovereign nation and interfere with their government? Balanced with just like wacky moments of like Wolverine getting ripped in half and people like swinging him around with his claws. Like there's just a lot. And Quentin Quire, who I love because he's rude. I've grown to love him over the years. And Cassara's art is really good and it's different. It doesn't look like anybody else's art, and it's really appealing to me. Fariha, have you been keeping up with X-Force?
So just before we started recording, I read the first trade worth of issues. So I'm caught up with until issue 6. And,
Okay.
like same, I think, well, I know that it starts with saying that, like there's people wanting to attack X-Force, but X-Men are like mutants now. But I kind of liked it this time. It's different because they want to attack them because now they are a super nation, which is kind of not the same as like, these downtrodden people, we don't want them. It's a different reason now for the attack, which is actually makes sense because this is the growing pains of starting a nation. Like, you will have enemies, you will have those things. I think I saw Benjamin Percy's interview, what he was talking about, that X-Force is the CIA, which is also mentioned in the comics as well. Yeah. And then it does make sense that you need to have that black ops side of thing for your nation to succeed, like, or for to show that you are not to a power to reckon with. And I think from that point of view, it's the first 6 issues at least has been a blast to read. Like, it's just been nonstop. And then also Quentin Quire is my personal favorite.
Yeah. So, and one other thing, like they actually elevated Black Tom.
Yeah, like what really a random choice.
Yeah, I know. He's so cool and it's so weird and so fun right now. I mean, it's just,
and then also like I never read anything with Forge in it, but the thing is like his diary and everything. I'm like, I need just an issue with all of that, like all the things that he does all day, and then it just like so much fun to read. I was shaken to the core with what happened to Domino because it just like but the thing is like she's coming back as a kick-ass, like kicking ass and everything, like, and then just because Quentin Quire is there, I'm like, this this is just awesome. And
so while we are on this, right, on X-Force, right, I have a question for the two of you.
Okay.
Like, who do you think Chronicle is? Chronicler.
Oh, you mean
the Russian, the person who always end with the Russian name is Chronicler. That's how it's being translated by Google for me.
Oh, really? I did not notice that. Well, I did not notice that.
I think I don't have a guess, but I just think it's interesting that this is one of the things that Dawn of X is doing really well, that this kind of like Russian plot is seeded through several different comics. And like, it's, even though X-Force has the brunt of it, you can see echoes of it elsewhere. Just like the whole idea of the person that's in the actual US FBI is mainly in Marauders, but then there's echoes of that in other comic books too. And we saw it echoed a couple weeks ago in Wolverine. Like, I actually think they're really well coordinated. Maybe one of the best kind of like interwoven coordinations that I've seen, but I don't have a guess, because like, who are the Russians you normally guess? Omega Red's not keeping any freaking journals. No. Colossus is in the comic too much for it to be him. Mikhail has his own thing to be doing. So who do you think it is?
I have no idea. I couldn't figure out who is a Russian mutant, and from some of the later data pages, it seems like he has some sort of precognitive powers or something, because he wrote what happened when Beast tried to shackle Colossus, which happens very differently in the book than what he wrote down.
That's right, and it was like redacted afterwards. Yeah.
So I was thinking that he has some sort of precognitive power, and so he wrote it down first, and then damn, that didn't happen, so he had to cancel it out.
So I want to drive into one more thing about X-Force, and then we'll talk about somebody else's favorite. I was put off at first because they come right out and kill Professor X, and we all know he's not going to stick. Like, there's no real mystery that he's going to come back. But Fariha, as the person who just read the first 6 issues, did you like roll your eyes at that? Like, you came out of HOXPOX excited that death is not the story anymore, and then the story starts out with big death. How did that feel to you?
So I kind of actually like that, because to me that was I had a concern that what happens if one of them dies, like, the 5 plus Professor X, like, what happens to that? And I'm kind of glad that they answered it right away. Right off the bat, that's answered, that's out of the way. You know what's going to happen. It's not a problem. And so it's just like, I feel like it just kind of took a cloud away. And then, I know that he's going to come back and everything, but I was kind of like, to me, it felt like, something that needed to happen at some point, and I'm glad that it was done first thing, just out of the way. My question was like, I remember one of the data pages, like, was it him who organized this?
No.
Okay, because there was like, there was this whole Professor X's confessional, and then the way it reads it, that he, like, he arranged, like he wanted it or something was there. So I was like, I don't know. But anyway, then again, I haven't read all of them, so I figured it will probably be coming somewhere down the road.
Well, that brings up one last thing I want to ask about X-Force. And I think, to me, X-Force is doing it the most effectively. X-Force has straight up prose pages where it cuts from a scene and then the scene continues in full prose. It's not just data. It's not somebody's letter, although it has those things too. But it, it describes people's feelings, their inner thinking, the way the environment around them looks, in the way that it would in a novel. And I've seen a lot of split opinions about this. Some people are like, but it's a comic book, like, show me. But I see other people who are like, wow, this is a view into this character, into their motivations that you don't get anymore because we don't get caption boxes anymore. We so seldom get thought balloons anymore, and it kind of takes you deeper. So Tyler, since this one is your favorite, where do you come down on those pure prose pages? Good, bad?
I really like it.
I love them.
One of my favorite series is Starman, and James Robinson does prose really, really well. The shade journals and stuff like that. So this sort of continues that kind of, the way that it's being done. And yeah, it's no mystery that I'm a huge Claremont fan. So, a lot of text doesn't bother me in comics. No.
And it's also because like Benjamin Percy is primarily a prose writer though, right? So it probably in his gene to kind of do that, like, to insert a lot of prose in that.
Yeah, I've just been a fan of how every one of the authors is using them differently. I think if everybody tried to do a Hickman style page with all the graphs and the circles and everything, it just wouldn't work because that's not where they all come from. And he is somebody who is a novelist and does write short fiction and things like that. And I think it's actually just plays to his strength, and different authors are using them in a different way. I love it. I mean, they're often my favorite point in the issue because I just feel like it's this little moment to get a little bit deeper into Beast, into Black Tom, into Xavier, and I actually find them really thrilling.
Yep.
All right, so Fariha, you haven't read one more thing on X-Force?
No, one more thing. It's just a plug for Benjamin Percy's other work.
Oh, please.
He wrote the two of the podcast for Wolverine, which are fantastic.
Ooh.
Like the Wolverine the Long Night and Wolverine something else, but Wolverine is voiced by Richard Armitage in it, and it is fantastic. And that is sort of kind of like the same Wolverine you see in X-Force in a way, even though that's not.
Yeah, it's not.
I don't think that's in continuity. It's like done it separately, but I do recommend everyone to actually listen to those. Those are available in Stitcher, and they're also the comic version of The Long Night is also out. So
very cool.
It's really good. I recommend that.
And I actually came in loving Benjamin Percy because I love his Green Arrow run from DC Rebirth. Some people who've been reading Green Arrow for a while didn't super love it, but for me, as somebody who comes and goes in the character, it just had a really epic quality. He had one huge story that lasted over 40 issues, which I always love as a Claremont fan. And Otto Schmidt was just utterly phenomenal on art. It looked like animation cells, right on the page. So another Ben Percy plug there. But now that we've covered X-Force for a bit, so first of all, Fariha, you're not caught up on every single issue yet. You're like caught up on some series, halfway on other series. Yeah.
Right.
But so far from what you've read, what are you fanning out over the most?
Well, I think it's no surprise. It's Marauders. How do you say it?
Marauders.
That's the one by Jerry Duggan. That has been nothing but, I think that was the most perfect superhero series other than Miss Marvel that you can see.
Wow. So you not only like it the most of the Docs books, but you're like, this is like
up there,
peak superhero for me.
It's peak superhero. It's peak competence porn. It's peak kick-ass ladies. It's peak everything. Like in terms of dialogue, in terms of like laugh or like fun. Like, superhero books can be fun. It's something that a lot of people forget.
Yeah. I'm here. Don't be scared of it being amusing. Yeah, you can laugh. It's okay.
yeah, it's fun. Like, and this is that. Like, 12 issues. I'm caught up with that. That's the only one I've been caught up with. Like, of all of them, it's just nonstop fun. And just they're just being kick-ass, they're being backstabbing, they're just smuggling all over the place. Kate is just a joy to watch. And it also kind of explains some of the things about, and we're going into spoiler territory, is that not everyone can come back the same way. Like, just the the rebirth doesn't work the same way, regeneration doesn't work the same way for everyone, something that we needed to see as well. And I mean, that's the one for me.
Now, something I find really interesting about that is and possibly Tyler, he can comment, delight in Marauders is definitely one of my favorites because it has so many amusing continuity references. But for you have history with Emma from like things like New X-Men and from Astonishing, just loving her. You have some history with Kitty Pryde, but you don't have as much history with like Nightcrawler or Shaw. Like, have you really read much of Shaw other than that one arc of Astonishing X-Men?
No. Like,
so what is your take on that whole Shaw father-son? Shaw's the bad guy, but also on the council. Like, how do you feel about all that?
So the thing is, I only know Shaw from the X-Men First Class, like, which we talked about, that apparently Kevin Bacon was not the right person, and I kind of see that now.
Right, now you get it. Now a year later you understand.
Now I get it. But the thing is, I don't have much history behind, but I do know that him and Emma are always been at a, not seeing eye to eye, and I think there is some really cringy path to them as well, which let's not get into that. But I think like this is kind of perfect in the sense, like, it's a worthy, like, two sides of the things. Like, it's just like, I feel like Emma, Kate, and Shaw just going at each other. It's like very juicy, and it brings that soap opera quality to it that I am super enjoying. And the thing is, like, it just because at the beginning I was not sure whether they are in on it, like they understand where, like, how far he's willing to go. But seems like now after Murders 12, we know that they totally knew that, and it's just a matter of keeping your enemies close, kind of thing with them. So I am kind of very excited to see how this kind of plays out, and really loving having him, actually. And he's awful. He's the worst.
But in the very last issue, it appears that Kate and Emma has some plans to push him away even before he murdered, Kate. They were talking about their plans before, and that he struck first. So it seems like, they are all playing a little bit of political games here.
Right. It's very like, Game of Thrones. But the thing is, like, it just, I think it kind of made sense that why they brought him in the first place, because it just to kind of keep him in check. So, but now it's like, okay, now what? Like, I'm pretty sure by the end of it, he will end up next to Sabretooth. Sabretooth? Who was it?
In the pit.
In the pit.
Yeah,
in the pit. Like, he will end up there. Like, I have a very strong feeling of that. It's just like how he gets there is the question.
What I really, so it's probably like my number 2 maybe or 3 out of all of them. I mean, I really love it. And it's probably the series that has had the most sustained issues where at the end of every issue, I'm like, well, that was just fundamentally perfect. And I think one of the reasons behind it for me is it recognizes that Shaw is a different kind of villain. You can have Omega Red, who's a murderous villain. You can have Mr. Sinister, who's this plotting villain. But Shaw's a villain that really kind of only cares about the concept of profit. And he's been rich before. Like, why does he want to profit even more? Because he just wants power. He wants money as a proxy for power. He wants control as a proxy for power. And even though he's been elevated to his highest status in mutantdom ever, and with being on the Quiet Council, right? He's on the council, isn't he? Yeah. But that's still not enough. Like, he still needs more control. And you kind of look at it and almost have to like laugh and pity him a little bit, because it's like, you're not going to get higher on the rung. Like, you're on the council with like Jean, Storm, Emma, and Kate. They're not going to let you pull anything. You're not more clever than Xavier. It's not going to happen for you, bro. Yeah. But like, it's still very compelling to me because there's no other X-Men villain right now that just has this like sheer ambition to mess with things. Even Apocalypse is a very different reformed villain. And this is why I like the idea that all the villains are back. Some people, there's another thing. Let's talk about another thing people don't like. How can you have all these villains on the island? They've all killed so many people. Why are they cooperating? Because it's about society. And in a society, there's good people and bad people. Him being in the society doesn't make him an X-Men. It just means he's a mutant who's a member of society. And I just find all of that incredibly fascinating. Like it draws me in every month.
And he's also like, very pro mutant now. Like
right.
Even with all his scheming, like when we see Ed Brisson's New Mutant series, like he was there to say like, these are our mutants, like, these are our problem. Like you are going to, shut the fuck up. Like, so it was just like, that's something that I kind of been enjoying, that even though he's also the same person who's going against other mutants, because of his ambition. But when it comes to the mutants that needs help, he's there to help them. So it makes things a little complicated, him as a complicated character. And, I think a worthy adversary for Emma, because who is a complicated character herself. So I think this has been one of the top tier.
Yeah, I mean, Shaw, like right from the beginning, he's not a person who is, concerned with mutants getting power. He's more concerned with him getting power.
Right.
So, if helping mutants get power means he gets more power, he's all for it. And I think that is encapsulated really nicely in that scene that you talk about in New Mutants. He's basically saying that, you're trying to rob not just from the mutants, you're robbing from me. And so I'm going to, F with you.
And I think he's the perfect foil for Kate, who's often portrayed as like the most altruistic of mutants in some ways, because she's like our gateway character, right? She's always been meant as the character we can sympathize with the most, even when she was a 13-year-old, because she was meant to be like the youngest character that fans could get into. But Kate goes through a totally different journey, quite a journey in this book, that starts out with her drunk and insistent on being a pirate, and ends with a pretty significant moment in the most recent issue, number 12. Fariha, how have you felt about this Kate arc of 12 issues?
So to me, that's where my gap in X-Men knowledge kind of fails me, because I feel like I've known of her from from Joss Whedon's X-Men, like where she's like kind of decided to bullet herself across the world and then go on this journey. And I don't know how she comes back. And I know a little bit of her from Peter's favorite X-Men, Wolverine and the X-Men, that Peter loves so much. He doesn't. And as a teacher in that series. And then, so I was a little surprised to see her in this like happy-go-lucky pirate mode, that's saying things like I am the stash and stuff. But then I'm like, well, maybe she just decided to not care anymore.
Yeah, it is interesting that you think she's happy-go-lucky in this series, because that's not how I look at it.
How do you see it?
I think that she's really angry, and she's really angry. And initially, I thought she's really guilty about something too. And I thought that her guilt was sort of, she bailing out of the wedding at the last moment. And then Colossus. Yeah. And then Colossus going to Russia and getting really hurt. So I thought that would be one of the things that she find herself guilt. And, I'm Asian, I'm Chinese, I'm always feeling self-guilt, kind of like a Jew. So, you know what I mean? Like, I now wish Zach is actually resurrected. So
I was going to say, this is where Zach joins the chat.
Yeah, I know. But I feel like she has a lot of guilt in the beginning, and she has a lot of anger at something. I couldn't quite figure out what she's angry at right now. I mean, besides the fact that she got murdered, that's one thing. And
she can't get on the island.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I also, one of the things, I'm sorry, please finish.
No. So that's where I differs from what you are thinking of. Like, you think that she's happy-go-lucky? I don't think she is.
Well, I think that's probably the wrong way I described it. I mean, it's just more like carefree or like having a projection that everything is okay, even though with all her past, something is probably not okay. But the thing is, like, she just decided to do this work for them as like a smuggler, let's say. And I was thinking, like, has a lot of anger for not being different mutant. Like, she's already different for being a mutant, and then she's once again made even further different because she can't get on the island. She doesn't know the language. It's everything is just kind of messing her up a little bit. But regardless of that, that to me is like, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to be on this journey. But the thing is, like, every interaction in this of her with, like, especially with Emma, it's just so good.
Jerry Dugan is so talented at that stuff, and he's great because I think he refers to continuity without you even realizing it. Like, he doesn't.
Oh my God.
He doesn't do it in a way that makes you think like, oh, I missed this whole series. And even the way that he writes Kate from the beginning, she's come right off of Gold, where basically at the beginning of Gold and X-Men Prime for Resurrection, Storm's like, I give up. I thought the X-Men would be safe in limbo, like I couldn't lead them. And Kate is like, well, I guess it's going to be me. And so she leads the team in Gold, and she almost gets married and then doesn't. All these things happen. Gold, not a great series. But yet I feel like it's referenced in a way in every issue by Dugan. And the same with Emma. Like, Emma was a bad guy. She was the straight up villain at parts of X-Men Blue. She was the Black King for a while. And are we talking about any of that explicitly in Marauders? Not so much, but like, I can feel that in all of the Emma interactions. And the same thing with Iceman and his coming out, the same thing with Bishop, who's kind of still being rehabilitated to an extent still from his actions back in 2010, which fans cannot let go of. I think like every one of the characters just has this sense of history, but it doesn't make you feel left out. Clearly, because Fariha, who hasn't read the majority of the things I'm talking about, loves it. I mean, when Shinobi Shaw came back, who I, as a 90s reader, love, I like screamed. I was like, yes! But still, it's cool without knowing the history because he made it work in terms of the father-son relationship with Sebastian Shaw.
Right. And the thing is, like, to me, I was like, yeah, obviously his son and him was not going to get along. And I just really loved how he just told him a completely false history of how they get together.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
That was just amazing. But talk about, like, I was talking, like, I sent you guys a screenshot of that, like, when Kate, like, died, and there was, like, Professor X gave an eulogy. He said that, oh, she's that one friend who will let you know when you're being a jerk. Like, it's like, I mean, I know of that panel that he's talking about, but even if you didn't, to you, you're like, oh, that's funny, isn't it?
Right.
But
that's it, exactly.
I knew what panel he was talking about, and to me, I was just laughing my head off at that. Like, so it's like this little thing, and then also, like, the FBI agent writing her diaries and stuff, like things. Like, sometimes you wonder, like, is Dugan talking about himself? Because like, he calls it like an X desk. Like, it's like, oh, he's not getting help. Like, is he not getting the editor or the right colorist or something? And is he talking about that? So it makes you wonder about that too. And I think, like, from that point of view, it has been, like, the right. It's just gold standard.
It's some of the most fun I've had reading a comic in the past 12 months. Like, no, really few things compare on the sheer fun level to Marauders.
And remember the fantasy that Pyro has when they were trying to trick Yellow Jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's something else. Talking about the characters.
That was
like what.
Emma was the one who was controlling that fantasy, and then when it finally comes together, then you are like, oh. Now you see why that particular person was picked by her. So it was just.
I know.
So I have a controversial favorite. And I learned this because on Twitter the other day, I asked everybody to list their favorites. Many people had Marauders at the top. Many people had X-Force at the top. Many people had X-Men at the top. That's not going to be mine. Yeah. Not a single other person had this one at the top of theirs. And it's somebody who I'm on the record of not liking. And it is my favorite. Statistically, like, I measured. I have a spreadsheet. It has all sorts of inner workings and pipes that connect to other pipes. And my favorite Dawn of X title is, in fact, New Mutants. And it's like, how did this happen, right? It started out
How
with,
did that happen?
It
It started out
started
with Hickman,
Hickman,
and then Brisson.
and then to Brazan, who I am on the record
Yeah.
as really disliking. I'm sure he's a really nice guy. Nothing I say on this channel that's mean about a creator is about them personally, unless they're like a actual terrible person. But I just don't like Brazan's writing. So how did we get here? I think
that new is actually good. That's my second favorite.
really.
That's, yeah.
Wow.
So see, it's not just me. So for me, and it'll be different for you, so I really want to hear your opinion. I am like this radical when it comes to X-Men, where I'm like, do I like Jean, Storm, and Rogue and all of these people? Yes. But if I could have a magical cutoff line that would always be moving forward so that the oldest X-Men just had to go retire somewhere and like drink beers and we could just get newer characters featured, I would take that. Like I would always rather have a book of newer X-Men than older X-Men. That's just, I just think that's what X-Men is. And whenever there's one of these big line reshuffles, I start to look at the casts and I'm like, we're just going to get the same big characters on all of the same books. They're going to be in every book. And really that hasn't been the case here. There's only a few characters who we see across multiple books, mostly Jean and Wolverine, which you can't get too mad at. And so immediately a book that's about characters that usually gets pushed to the side in these relaunches, I'm going to like, right? So that starts it. B, the Rod Rice artwork in the Hickman issues is just beyond. I think I love how loose he is. I love that he does a lot of like illustration with color, like he does strokes and color. He does color holds where the line work are actually in color instead of black, and you held the color over from black. I love the art. So I loved the New Mutants having fun, even though they were in trouble in space, even though it was like deadly, they were allowed to have joy. And I just think that with many of the younger generations of X-Men, we always have to see them being oppressed and seeing them murdered one by one. So to know that they all could come back and to see them having fun, even in the face of danger, and to get so many great moments, especially with Sunspot, especially with Magic, it just warmed my heart. But then the Brazan stuff took over. I'm like, well, this is where it's going to fail, right? In the first issue, I was like, ugh. But again, the artwork, Flaviano's artwork is off the hook. Nobody is drawing like that right now. It's like psychedelic. It's just this like acid splash of colors. Everybody looks distinct and different, and I just love it. And then again, Brazan took a cast of like 10 other X-Men by the last couple of issues. He had Wildside. Is that the guy? I don't even know his name from the Mutant Liberation Front.
Wild Child.
No, I don't even know. I can't even remember his name. Yeah, Wild Childs and Hellions. And just like the range of all of those characters, the stories he's telling, the thing that he's making about mutants that are mutants that are new, right? Not just the New Mutants, but people whose experience is fresh in this Dawn of X setting. And I could not love it more. I'm like here for every issue. And I'm shocked, especially because to end my diatribe and pass it to Fariha, issue 12, he writes the best issue of this moment between Magic and Glob Herman, who I hate him. And the moment made me love him and understand why people like him. And I'm like, that is good comic writing. If you can make me sympathize with a character who I usually say how much I hate, then you have succeeded at writing an excellent.
Was it the one with the cooking?
No, the cooking was good too, though, and I do want to try that recipe because it sounds delicious.
No. Laksa is coconut based, not curry based. Laksa is based on shrimp, not a vegan laksa is an oxymoron. That's what I'm saying. It's oxymoron.
And this is why Tyler doesn't like Ed Brazan. No, but this is what I mean, like to have Ed Brazan, who's not necessarily a prose writer, have his data page be a recipe. Like this is what I'm looking for from my X-Men comics. Like break the format, do something different. Don't show me any characters that are from before 1980. Don't show me any Jonathan Hickman data pages. And I think that the fact that we went from Hickman doing it on the New Mutants to Brazan doing it on this cast that spans generations, it's just what I'm here for. So Fariha, why did you like it? You don't even have a history with all these nobodies like I do. Like, why did you love it?
And you hate Beak.
Yes, I was just gonna say that. Like, I like it despite Beak.
Her least favorite mutant, canonically.
Beak is the worst. Like, you know, I mean, a new X-Men, like Morrison, I'm like, oh, please let it go. Oh,
one day I'm gonna do a super cut of all the times you've come on my channel to malign and slander Beak.
Beak. Like, and then they now have like a million children. Like, oh my God. Like, you know.
And you had a moment, probably like me, where you rolled your eyes a little bit at that, right?
Yeah. So the thing is like, okay, I mean, before we get I just want to say take 1 minute, sorry, not even 30 seconds for a Fariha PSA. Please, people, creators, if you're making two distinct looking character, male and female, have children, do not make the sons to look like the father and then the daughters to look like the mother. Genes doesn't work that way. Nothing works that way. And I say that when I am a picture a complete clone of my mother. I know that. But I also have a sister who's a complete clone of my father.
Right.
But
mix it up a little bit.
It happens all the time, even with cats and dogs in media. Stop doing that. And I actually checked. That's how it is. That's how there's 6 children. I think 4 of them looks like Beak, and then 2 of them looks like Angel, and the 2 is the daughters. I've checked. It's stop it. But anyway.
Yeah, gender is a construct. Just eliminate the whole gender or the quality from this decision.
Right. Just don't do that. Just mix them up. You know, you can be creative with that. But yeah, so the thing is despite having Beak in it and blob or glob.
Do you love how she says his name like it's like the foulest word? Anyway, I'm sorry. Keep interrupting because I just love it.
Blob is in Dawn of X. He's the bartender.
He's It's
Blob.
Blob. It's Glob and Blob, 2 different characters.
Yeah, Glob and Blob.
I'm sorry. There's 2 of them. I forgot. It's Glob. It's well, at least I kind of like him from them, Wolverine and the X-Men. But despite being them, it's everything that you said is nonstop fun. I mean, if Murder's at number 5 out of 5 for me, this is 4.9 out of 5 for me, only because Sunspot is now off to a space adventure and not here anymore. And
because you love him from Hickman's Avengers. You have a pre-existing relationship.
And then I'm and then not only that, I followed his journey in the
US or New Avengers and then US Avengers by Al Ewing.
Something Avengers, Al Ewing's run and everything. It just he is one of my favorite character. And then so having him, but the thing is it just them just going and having different kinds of fun, and it's kind of follow the same recipe as the X-Men series, where it's 2 issues an arc, and then it just moving from adventures to adventures to adventures, and then magic is kind of just getting involved. Is it Magic? Who is that? The captain,
Magic with the sword.
Yeah, Magic is
the coolest X-Men.
Yeah, they're having to clean up their messes, and then there's all these other things that are going on. I just love that, and it's so many different characters. The Wild Side, I don't know where he's from, what's his past, but he's becoming my favorite as well.
I love how mean they had to invent in personality. This book probably is the characters who in total have the least appearances out of all of the characters of all the books. I mean, it had Mondo. It had we're digging. I mean, it's got Armor and Glob and ones that we recognize, but they're digging deep for some of these characters, and I just love it.
No, I mean, the thing is we were talking about how New Mutants it's all fun, and they're doing a lot of fun and having a fun adventure, whether there's in space or whether there's back in home. But it also has a lot of heavy moments, because we have seen that those 2 new children, I think they're brand new, right?
They're not. Extermination? They're from...
No. Did they appear in Wolverine and the X-Men too?
Maybe.
Right at the end, when they came to tour the school or something like that?
Oh, that's true. Potentially. Yeah. I don't know about that, but they're actually pretty fun. So those 2 kids, they actually decided to be Professor X and, erase their memories of Beak and Angel of what happened. And that has been, so far has gone... it's not been reconciled yet. Yeah. So that is something that is hovering on top of them. That we haven't seen yet, how that's going to play out. So there is moments like this that just actually makes it so perfect. And not to mention also Glob having that moment, talking about his past and everything, that just was very upsetting.
Well, I mean, it's
go ahead, Tyler.
It's Brisson loves his qualified victories. It's we won. But this thing happens after the fact. So it's kind of win, but not really 100% winning.
And also, to me, that's part of what makes it New Mutants. It's these characters will make mistakes too. And I think so often in the past, when we've had New Mutants or Generation X or whatever kind of younger generation there is, they're kind of still reacting to the mistakes made by the older generation all the time. And I kind of just really appreciate that in this run, they get to make their own mistakes. Like the New Mutants made plenty of bad decisions in space, which are going to continue to affect the whole line, right? They, and then the kids made bad decisions, and like Boom Boom is made of bad decisions. And that's fine. Like, we don't need these young characters to be just perfect, silly characters all the time. Like, they can have morally deep decisions to make in the same way everybody else does. If we go back to Claremont, especially when Bill Sienkiewicz joined Claremont from New Mutants 18 back in the 80s, like that's what New Mutants was. It was young people having to make hard decisions for the first time. And I just think that like this book is really upholding that. Now, whether it's going to continue, whether it's going to still have this feel after X of Swords, Brazan's wrapping up, we're going to have a different writer, who knows? But up until issue 12, year one, it's my favorite.
And not to mention, they're also dealing with modern things like, online, like,
doxing.
Online fake news and doxing literally.
Right, the actual doxing, not just Dawn of X, but doxing. I thought that was so clever, though, that it was like about how they were doxing the mutants. And so the mutants are like, well, what if we reverse dox you and like hold you accountable to the things that you're saying online? And it's kind of like on one side, two wrongs don't make a right. But on the other side, it's like if everybody was accountable for the things that they were saying, would they say all the things that they were saying, And it's actually a really interesting plot beat. Yeah, and that's why I thought that was so brilliant to have Glob kind of confront this group of people who were effectively anonymous before. And so Glob himself felt this rage. And he even said, like, everybody's complaining about Glob, me included, is like he was this total murder doll in Grant Morrison's X-Men. Like he wanted to just like, commit genocide against humans. He was part of the riot at Xavier's. How do we kind of like reconcile Huggy Glob that everybody loves now, their sweet soft boy, with with murder doll Glob, from Morrison? And I feel like Brazan like bridged that gap in a way that's really relevant to the actual world, which is to say, like, it's easy to hate people when they're anonymous and when you're anonymous. And when you have to like hate actual people and treat them like people, it's just a different story. And I just think it was good writing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's sort of, it really just bridges that change in character, which happened so suddenly. And, you kind of associate it with like, okay, this is just another different writer's.
Right. This is just a writer forgetting what this character's like, doing their take.
Yeah. But it's not. So, I mean, apparently it's not, because he explained it. He built up a story behind it as to why he's no longer that guy.
Yeah. Well, so let me now spring on you. I know we still want to talk about favorite moments, but we've picked 3 different series from each other. There's many other series. So now let me please spring on you a lightning round. You get one quick comment to make about the books that were not our favorites. And we will start with, gosh, do I even know what all the other books are called? Maybe not. Excalibur. So I don't think Fangirl down there is caught up on Excalibur. So just for you and I, lightning round. Tyler, Excalibur, thoughts?
It's really heavy.
Heavy how?
And it's a lot of information.
Yeah. And
it's a lot of new information that you need to digest. So I think it reads better when you read it, together at one go. If you read piece by piece, floppy by floppy, you don't remember. Yeah, you don't remember what happened.
So here's my lightning round on Excalibur. Really cool story. Characters are totally on voice. I'm not convinced those characters need to be in this story. Like, it feels like it could be a story just with Betsy or with totally new characters or totally different characters. I don't really understand like why Rogue and Gambit have to be there. And yet, Teenie Howard writes them well. But I just kind of feel this disconnect of like, I don't think this is an Excalibur book or an X-Men book or it has the right cast. There's just like something about it, even though it's very well made, great art, that's just like not quite connecting for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now Fallen Angels, which I think Fariha thankfully also has skipped. Tyler, lightning round, Falling Angels.
Don't read.
I think it tried a very noble... It's that bad. I mean, it's really one of the worst X-Men books of all time. If people like it, that is cool.
But I'm sorry,
yeah.
What?
But it's very sad. It's very sad, though. It's like Brian Hill...
who I love! Who I root for, who I enjoy on most other comic books.
Yeah, who was awesome in Poston and everything, but then he's also the only person of color, I think, is writing a main series. So the fact that one happens to be the worst, and then also was canceled first, really did not work well for me.
No, it's not good.
Yeah, it's not.
It's
I mean,
not.
I think
I read the first issue and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna come back to it later.
I think
And that's me.
the promise of it is the flaw of it, which is that he wanted to take an underexplored character in Quanon and like give her a history and give her a reason to be, but it just made it feel so far away from what was happening in the other X-Men books that it just, and there were some tonal problems with how he was writing other characters like X-23, Laura as well, that it just never quite connected. But I will say, I would go back and reread it just for the Sinister scenes. I actually think he did some interesting things with Mr. Sinister. No book is all bad, and just because we don't like it doesn't mean you don't have to like it. All right, so next up, Big Daddy Hickman's X-Men. Fariha, you are caught up on most of this one, I believe, right?
I am, and then as you also know,
so
as I'm going to marry that man. So
yes, Fariha's Hickman's #1 fan / stalker. So without getting into favorite moments, which we're going to talk about later, lightning round. Fariha, X-Men, good, bad?
It's pretty good. To me, so far, it's been pretty good. Some of the things I don't know, I don't understand, but that's okay. I'll get at some point.
All right, Tyler, lightning round.
I think it's a series of setups, which, it can be good, can be bad, depending on what the payoff is, later part. But right now, I think there are some really, really good issues, and there are some iffy issues. The Mystic issues is really good.
Well, let's save our favorite moments. I hate it. I don't think it's X-Men. I think it should be canceled.
That's harsh.
I hate it almost as much as I hated Fallen Angels. I mean, it's lightning round. I hate it. I don't have to explain myself. So on that note, that incredibly uplifting note, we're going to break here and say goodbye. We're going to come back with what I think will be a much shorter episode, but I have no way of knowing when it comes to the three of us, where we're going to talk about only our greatest hits, our absolute favorite moments, which will be from some of the other books, and what is our #1 best moment of Dawn of X so far. So please return to hear more of our reformed HiX-Men Report here on Crushing Comics.